So good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Our session, zeroing in on integration. You like the way we did the zeroing, like
No pun intended.
there. So thanks to our speakers, Amanda. Sorry, Amanda, I should know how to say your last name. I've known you long enough, but you say it.
Aguilard.
Aguilard. That's what I probably would have put a little more of a U. Aguilard. CPA, Certified Instructional Systems Designer. I don't even know what that is. COO of Paget Business Solutions and the owner of Accounting Salon, which you said that just took place?
Yep, that was a couple weeks ago in Florida.
Hanging at the beach. Then we also have Scott Scarano, an EA. He's a firm owner and host of the Sons of CPA podcast. My name is Gary Dehart. I don't have to read that one. I'm the publisher of Insightful Accountant and host for the Future Forward Summit. So I'd like to say thanks to our sponsor, Xero. Xero is a powerful cloud accounting software that improves efficiencies across your practice. With all client data stored on a single unified ledger, you and your clients can easily access and collaborate on the same set of books. Xero's advisor tools and automation solutions reduce time-consuming manual tasks and put data entry on autopilot. You can work faster, more efficiently than ever with Xero. And a couple of housekeeping items. And you two are you two both 100% Xero?
Pretty much. I would say in high 90s.
Yeah.
High 90s.
Yeah. I know Amanda's been long time, right? So
yeah, I'm old.
Yeah.
OG
I didn't say
zeros.
that. I know better than to say that. I would never say that. So housekeeping items. We do offer CPE for this session, but like all the other ones, you have to be here 50 minutes. You have to complete the poll questions. And we will send you the certificate within, I'm giving myself 3 days to get that out. But if you don't get it from us within 3 days, shoot us a note. You know how to find us. If you have any questions, put them down in the chat or in the questions panel. They'll both try to get to them. We'll all be monitoring it. A link to the recording will be, I'll drop that. That will be sent to you, but it will also be posted on our YouTube channel. And I will put a link to the YouTube channel in the chat. And a copy of the session or of the slides will also be available in the chat, and that will also be sent to you. So there's lots of ways you can get this information. We do have some poll questions to kick us off. I believe our first poll here, let me get caught back up here. All right, first poll. Hold on, before I do that, Amanda and Scott, again, thank you both for being here. We look forward to hearing what you have to share and learning a lot more on Xero and integrations. So
Zeroing in.
There we go, zeroing in. I don't know if this was in the slide deck or not. If you had anything you wanted to put up on that slide deck, Amanda, are you running that or Scott?
I'm going to run it right now. I'll start sharing, and then this is just a holding slide. If you want to run the first poll, then we'll get started. Yeah. Thanks, Gary. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely, and I'm going to become Oz here and go off the screen and see y'all in about 50 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Well, thanks for having us. I know everybody needs to do their poll so they can get their CPE.
And panelists cannot vote, but I think I'm a power connector. I don't know. I don't do it daily. Definitely don't do this daily, but
I think about it daily.
Yeah.
Daily. Be interesting to see what the responses that come in look like. I saw on the attendees, I saw some friends of ours out there. So thanks to y'all for showing up and coming to join us. I guess we'll give you a couple more minutes or a couple more seconds on this poll. And then when Gary closes that out, we will, okay, I think we're closed out. Let's see, power connectors, looks like more than half, a little bit. Good. That's going to be fun because we'll have a good discussion about those with those who know a little bit, and then mostly broken integrations. Yeah, no jokes, right? That's one thing about this that about integrations, they all change. Okay, well, so hopefully
it's an ongoing job to keep up with it.
It is.
You know, it's not set it and forget it, but
it's almost you almost need somebody in your firm that does nothing but that. Can you guys see my screen fine? It's hard for me to tell on Zoom, but hopefully everybody can see the slides. So Scott, I don't know, this might be the first time you and I have done a webinar together. I know we've done at least one podcast.
At least one, yeah.
Yeah, and then I feel like I knew you a lot about you before, and we talked and stuff before we met in person, but I think we've only known each other in person for about a year. But tell the folks what you are up to these days.
Yeah. So most of my time is spent doing it. Oh, wow. We have another poll already. Does that come up for everybody?
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know if that's all right.
That was user error. That was operator error. Sorry about that.
no worries.
all good. I think I spend most of my time on my podcast now and just kind of, I got a lot to learn, about running my firm, about becoming a better manager of people and everything. So my podcast was meant to do that, to ask, what others are doing and to find the best people in the industry to ask questions about. And so I got, I think my whole world started at ground zero. Again, no pun intended, but since I've been involved with Xero, I've met a lot of new people and learned a lot of new things. So I wanted to share a lot of that. I have an accounting firm as well, Paget in North Carolina. We're fully virtual, and I'm in my basement right now doing this. We don't have an office anymore. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not good with the introductions and stuff like that. So we'll
You're
take it over
good.
to you. I mean, I've known, again, like we kind of knew each other for a while, but never really met in person until last year. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Amanda, or tell the
Well,
audience. Yeah.
I think probably a lot of people have heard my story, but like I was Big Four, had a big deal job, and then stopped working for a while, and then got divorced, and so had to in 2012 figure out what my world was going to look like, and I did not want to go back to public accounting. I had 2 little kids. We were going through this divorce, and so I didn't really decide. I was just like, I'll take some contract work on the side, and ended up kind of building an accounting practice out of my guest bedroom with these kids. And I did it deliberately so that, it was virtual back then, when that was kind of not maybe the standard sort of as it is right now, I think, for our peer group, but looked around for accounting software. And back then, QuickBooks Online was not a great product, 2012. And so kind of landed on Xero through a tech conference I went to, and was like, this is awesome. And being so early in the adoption of Xero, built my practice on Xero and got connected with those folks, and wanted to share the word of how great this product was. And so ended up building, after I got everything wired for my practice, started a training company called Elephant. And we train on Xero. I have since been a Xero ambassador. I am current Xero ambassador, and then wrote a book on Xero, and I'm currently writing a course on Xero. So I'm kind of, I say
You're a serial entrepreneur. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I am. And I'm tied really closely to Xero. I mean, these are my people. These are my good friends. But my day job, as you know, is as the chief operating officer for Paget. So I get to spend most of my days helping firms, some small, some big like yours, across the country, adopt technology and work through processes. And it's awesome. It's a good group of people, and I'm happy to be there.
I like to say you have your feet on the ground and head in the clouds.
Oh, that's a great segue to talk about how did we even get here to talk about integrations? How did we how is this a thing now in 2022?
So I think, again, we both have had our heads in the clouds for a while. I've been using Xero for almost 10 years now. It's changed my life. And my ground zero, like I said earlier, came from Xero. We needed to find something that we could do, work with clients remotely in the cloud, and we had clients all over the country. So it was difficult to tap into their QuickBooks, doing remote desktop and all that. And like you said, QuickBooks Online wasn't really worth anything. And I saw this Xero has an open API. I don't even know what API meant. I still kind of don't know what it means. I think we're going to define it here in a minute. But it kind of shaped the future of our firm. Right now, I think I said this earlier too. We have about 95% of our clients are on Xero, and we grew our practice from that time period with Xero. So we stayed within that ecosystem, and it works best for us because we don't have to context shift GLs. It's really hard to go from one GL to another if you're doing a lot of ongoing work for clients. Just that mindset, is at very least, it's easier for us to keep up with our systems. So just kind of setting the stage and saying how, my background with Xero and using it. And yeah,
yes. So I'll just add in this too. I'm a little bit old, I'm probably a good bit older than you are, but I started, as an accountant. I've been a CPA for almost 20 something years. Back in when I first got into accounting, there there were legacy systems, desktop systems. You guys probably remember Mass and Great Plains and stuff. And that was like, when you bought an accounting package back then, you bought all the stuff that came with it. Like you bought all the pieces to do all the accounting.
You bought the box.
You bought the whole box. Yeah. So if you needed, inventory management, you bought the Great Plains inventory management or fixed asset management. And so what we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about today is like how we can strip it down to a really good, pretty cheap GL and build ecosystems through these integrations, and not have to be locked into one heavily licensed desktop package.
Yeah.
So,
and then that brings its own challenges and struggles too if you're adopting a lot of technology at once. So I think, early on I had in front of the fire hose, whatever they say about that, is drinking from the fire hose and just adopting all of these different apps. And it's gotten pretty crazy over the years. So I think now, we're looking at consolidating and paring down the amount of apps that we use and the amount of integrations we do, and trying to keep that consistent across the board among our clients. So
we were talking about this at Accounting Salon, you and I and the rest of the group, is like, we've the pendulum has swung, right? Like what I just said about big, huge accounting packages. And then we went to this place, and we'll talk about in the next slide, like where the flip happened in 2013, where it was like, okay, well, let's just go out and get best of breed of every single, functionality. And now what we talked about at Accounting Salon was like it coming kind of back to the middle, which is like, because I think a lot of these apps are buying each other, expanding functionality, they kind of overlap more than they used to 10 years ago. And so, yeah, to your point, like maybe we come kind of back towards the middle where we have just a core number of apps connected, because as you mentioned, getting into this, things don't always work the way they're supposed to.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how, like, so when we were preparing for this, I think there was almost a date or a specific month in time where
everything changed.
Where everything changed. And that was, I think it was Brad Smith at Connect in November of 2013. This is David Leary's tweet from then, where Intuit announced that they were going to put 90% of the resources towards QBO, cut the anchor to desktop, and very importantly, remove the development fee per user, right? And why did that happen in that year?
Ground zero.
Because
Xero came along the year before.
Yeah.
So I think Xero woke a sleeping giant. QuickBooks and Intuit, still kind of does, but they had a stranglehold on the market, and they dictated how things were going to work. And because Xero came with open arms to everybody, we'll work with everybody, where we have the open sandbox, we have a playground for everybody to play in, which they still have that mindset, but they shifted QuickBooks, ideas around this. I'm looking at that screenshot there, and it's, Intuit's probably bought a handful of those companies already within that little circle. I know I see T-sheets in there. So, again, it's the pendulum swinging a little bit, but we may see a little bit more consolidation. But Intuit is also an open playground of integrations as well. But I think they have a different mindset around that, and Xero has always been open to that. So, and that's what we're going to get into, is Xero's integrations, the good, the bad, and the ugly of that. So,
I think
2.0.
So I think to your point, when Xero came into the US market in 2012, they made Intuit start to think, man, okay, well, we're charging for these developers to build in. There's not really a profit motive to do that. If we pull this off, then we're going to, be able to open everything up and have these apps go out there and build really great software, which is exactly what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember how many connections there are on the Xero app marketplace. I think it's well over 1,000 now. When I started I think when I started, it was like 300 or 400. But and most of those also connect with QBO, if we're being honest. So anyway, so I think 2013 was when we got off the races. That kind of kicks off the next phase of cloud, and gives us the opportunity to connect all the things all the time, right? Like we just follow the trail of integrations and everything will be fine, right?
That's what the apps say. That's what the reps say is use our integration. So we're here to warn you about certain integrations, and not to just dive in head first. Integrations are a bridge between two products, and just understanding what that does and understanding, the downstream impact of that is going to be very important. So that's what we'll get into. So what is an integration, Amanda? So I guess I'll go through what my definition or what I think an integration is. It's going to be data moving between systems automatically. There are certain things that will trigger different pieces of data to move. And sometimes one company is developing that integration, sometimes another. The apps on both sides love to say, we are, it's more like we're cool with Xero. We work with Xero, or we work with QuickBooks. It's a form of validation too for the app. And then especially for Xero or for QuickBooks, it's a form of validation for them. If it's a popular product, it can get more users on both sides. It's like sort of a, rising tide for everybody. So, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And it doesn't mean that the integration is robust. Sometimes it'll just have a little tag for we work with Xero, but it won't necessarily say everything it does or what it does. So just consider what data that you need to move or that needs to be integrated too, because it's not just a plug and play with a lot of these. Sometimes it's going to require some work. Sometimes it's require some massaging of the data. And so, I guess let's go a little bit further into that and what that means for everybody.
So, how many of y'all have had a client come to you and say, well, I signed up for this app and I'm using it because it integrates with Xero. And you're like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean that integrates? Because if you go to a marketing site for, a landing page for an app, your client will see the logo and they'll think, well, all my problems are solved, right? I like Xero and I like this operational thing. Therefore,
it's crazy because years and years we've had clients find us through Xero. So they'll be all over the country. They find us because we work with Xero and their accountant maybe wouldn't, or they would only work with QuickBooks. And they say, we're using this new CRM or we're using this new platform and it works with Xero. They'll come to us and we'll look at the integration. We'll look at it and we'll say it's probably not a good idea to even integrate it. So, there's something to be said about just an integration and just the idea of working with this platform just because it integrates. So that's just a warning shot that I'll make. And, it's not all integrations are created equal and not all things are meant to be integrated. So let's keep going. What's an API? We're going to.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to add before we move on, I think that's a really critical point. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So even if you can integrate with something, like that might be one of the criteria I look at when I'm looking at operational software for a client, but I'm much more interested in what the software does. Cause I can always, and we'll talk about this in a second, I can always probably have a workaround for a direct integration. So that's great if it's going to be good, but you really have to dig in and figure out what connects and what pulls over, which is, so we always talk about APIs. You keep hearing that around. What is an API?
Yeah. So I always have to refresh my memory on what the acronym stands for. I have an idea of it in my head, an application programming interface. So this is Xero's always had their open API. What does that even mean? It's a set of rules in the software about how it'll interact with another software. So if it's open, that means they're more friendly to opening it, but it's not necessarily everything is open. It might only be the contacts can pull in. It might only be that the first names can pull in. It doesn't even pull in the first and last names, or it'll pull them in into one field and then it jumbles up the data. So, understanding what is actually going to be connected is going to be very important. The integrations evolve over time. Sometimes they get better, sometimes they regress and they get worse. So, just diving in head first we're just kind of warning on that and, making sure that you understand what this stuff means too.
Yeah. So API, those are the rules. And with Xero, for example, having an open API, it means developers have access to those rules. So like Xero publishes and makes public the rules for connecting to their interface and what these calls, API calls can be and what they can pull. So so if you have the time and money, anybody can build software that connects with Xero because their APIs are open.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's it. It's just a fancy, it's not super complicated, but it's just the rules around the software. So would you say that all integrations are the same and created equal?
Yeah. So I think I've kind of been alluding to that, and they're not. There's some great integrations, some that we've set up and that are working magnificently. Sometimes something will change a little bit here and there, but otherwise, to a large degree, that's saved our lives, saved us a ton of time. We've been able to, increase our, it's given us more capacity. It gives us more time. Like the more you can automate, the more time you'll have to spend to spend on what really matters. And that's, client services, client relationships, and going deeper with the clients. So, all the warnings that we said leading up to this, the integrations are key to expanding your service line and to just expanding what your role is as an accountant too. Changes the profession a lot when you don't have to do a lot of this data entry and manually move things. And sometimes it's a product of using multiple different products for one thing. If you had one product that was the center of everything, like we were saying earlier, like, your inventory and everything was all in Great Plains, you didn't even need the integrations because it was all built in. But so, it's kind of a delicate balance between what integration is necessary and what it can do. But the end result is going to be the more you can automate, the more you can do as a professional.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And going back to them not being equal, like just because an app says it's going to do something doesn't mean it necessarily will. There's this concept in development called MVP, a minimal viable product, where just because it connects doesn't mean it's going to actually do anything of value. And then those connections get different, they change, they get better. So yeah, it's a tricky slip. So let's help folks, give them a big warning in case you didn't catch this over the last 20 minutes. Be careful about integrations. Marketing websites don't necessarily tell you what's under the surface. They are there to sell the app, and the copy is not written by accountants, like almost exclusively. Like it is not written by accountants.
Cases.
Yeah. In most cases, it's written by folks that are trying to justify raises, funding raises.
Fundraise, yeah. So, and you won't always see the fin hovering above the water, but make sure you know what's under the surface too. So,
right.
And let's kind of get to the next poll.
Yeah.
So,
Gary, you gonna pop a poll for us? All right, which general ledger do you use?
So I think we've answered that for
us. For us, but
I'd be curious to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So while people answer that, I'm going to throw in something that it was kind of tongue in cheek, but you guys really touched on it back. We do our Top 100 Pro Advisor Awards program, and probably every other year we'll do a Friend of Intuit. And the first year we did it, I was like, well, I think Xero should be Friend of Intuit, right? Because 2014, they kind of woke up around the product like you guys were talking about. It's really funny listening to y'all talk about that, because that was a very similar conversations we had. It was like, wow, they actually now have to invest in this product.
I think Xero made Intuit better, made QuickBooks.
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, that's why I was like, they're the friend of Intuit this year, 2014. So, all right, well, I think we're good there. I'm gonna go ahead
and let's see what the group has to. Okay, go. Oh, good. We have mostly QuickBooks. Good. Maybe we can convert a couple people. All right. So let's talk about Scott. Let's talk about ecosystems.
Yeah. So there's a chapter in your book dedicated to ecosystems. Chapter 2 in Amanda's book, which is behind me. I got 2 copies of it here. What is an ecosystem? So the group of software that you use is to, in most cases, that's what the ecosystem is. And that's what we're going to be referring to. So your group of software packages that all serve a purpose. So whether it's payroll, and then whether it's, parts of e-commerce or your bill pay, not one platform is going to do it all. And Xero, has always been, we focus on the core product, and then we'll let everybody else do what they do best and port in. So that's, I think, the intention, and that was what, Xero was kind of known for in the beginning. They did try to do payroll in the US. They don't anymore. They did, they're working on different things, and I think we will see some more consolidation, but they're the GL. That's the source of truth. That's where the information is held for a lot of financial information. And what makes up that ecosystem is going to be different for different industry verticals, for different clients. But as a firm, I think it's very important to define what your ecosystem is. So even as a firm, you could look at, what apps do you use? Are you a Google firm? Are you a Microsoft? Do you have, Teams, or do you have Zoom, or do you have Google Meets? All of the things that you're using with your email platform, that's part of your ecosystem. And, like we were saying on our firms, we use Xero. Xero is part of our ecosystem. That's the heart of our ecosystem. I think the GL is the heart of the heart of the house. I don't know, heart of the ecosystem. So that's kind of where it all starts. I have used the phrase, the anatomy of a firm, and I've taken the different platforms that we use and make that part of the anatomy. So I have the heart, I call it Ignition. That's where we, do our proposals. We have our CRM is HubSpot. That's sort of like the, I don't know what that is on the, I'll get there, but our Xero is sort of like the blood veins, going through in and out of the body. And then you've got the skeleton for us is Carbon. So that's sort of like the backbone of our firm. And we have, we do our forecasting with Live Plan. So that's our eyes that are looking. I haven't worked this whole thing out yet, but I've kind of like taken different body parts, like the other blood that's flowing is Gusto. That's our payroll that we use primarily. So I've been kind of looking at it like that. Like each part serves a purpose, right, in your body. And that's what it is for our firm too. It's not just one size fits all either.
Yeah, I think you make a good point when you're doing this sort of like 30,000 foot analysis, is look at your internal stack and look at your client facing stacks. Your internal stack is what you're using for running your practice, but your external stacks are going to be dependent on industry verticals probably. And we'll look at that in a second. But one thing that this is an image that I have to disclose came out of my book. It's copyrighted, but I wanted to make sure that we shared it with you guys. This is what like I legitimately use to map out systems for clients is to sit there and think about the way the data moves. As Scott mentioned, an integration is a data flow. It is not some magic. It's what's connected to what and what data is coming.
Feels like magic sometimes.
It can feel like magic. It can feel like black magic sometimes too. So this is just an example. And I'd suggest that you guys do this for your clients. When you map it, don't map it by apps, map it by functionality. Because there's a lot of overlap in apps, and like we, but especially our clients like chase the shiny new thing, to go, and we're like, oh, this, crazily spelled app is the thing that everybody is using, and let me go get that. And you're like, I don't even know if I need it. I don't even know exactly what it does. So start here with using functionality to do mapping for integrations for ecosystems, and then you can kind of see where you progress. Well, and let me make this point too. In this example, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse on the screen, but the arrows indicate the data flow. So it's real important to see, like, you would have timekeeping sending over data to your payroll, sending over data to your general ledger. Banking is one way. It goes into your general ledger. You don't send anything back the other way. Whereas bill payment, using an add-on like bill.com, that's a two-way sync. So making sure you're paying attention to how data flows, that's going to help you build integrations and evaluate integrations.
So we got a question from James about CRM. Do you guys use a CRM at your firm?
We're mostly using Carbon for that.
Carbon. Okay. So you can use, James, you can use Carbon as a CRM. For us, we keep all of our CRM in HubSpot, or all of our inflow or marketing inbound leads all flow into HubSpot, and then it pushes it to Practice Ignition. And all the data will go from client fills out an intake form and type form. It goes into the CRM, it goes into HubSpot. And then when we have a consult or when we're creating a proposal, it pushes it from HubSpot to Practice Ignition, or Ignition, take out the practice. And then Ignition pulls all that data in and then pushes it to, after the customer has accepted a proposal, it'll push the work to Carbon, and it'll also push the financial data to Xero, because our internal GL is Xero. So it's actually, Ignition is pushing it in two different places. And the important data, like the work that's going to be assigned after it's paid for. So all of that stuff pretty much happens in the background manually. Sometimes we have to reconnect things. Sometimes, Ignition changed their name, so then the bank feeds tend to get a little broken. We got to fix that. So it's always just a little bit of upkeep, but it's all pretty much automated, and we don't have to do much. Xero, it keeps that stuff reconciled because Ignition does that. So, but it all starts with, we don't want to get Carbon too muddied, because a lot of leads, but not a lot of clients come out of those leads. So we do keep a separate CRM for all of the mess of leads and tracking that and keeping up with all of it. So
yeah, and my firm's the opposite. Like we are not seeking new leads. I mean, we're not seeking new clients. So like, I'm good to just manage everything in Carbon. I don't have a lead funnel. I don't have, outbound marketing. I'm not doing any of the sexy stuff. We are just managing the folks that end up mostly as clients. So it's a good database for this. But
well, it depends on what your definition of sexy is, because I think these charts are pretty sexy too. I like this.
It goes back to the point we were making earlier, which is you got to figure out what it is you need and where the master of the data lives. So like you guys filter, you have everybody in HubSpot, right? And you filter out actual clients into Carbon. So your master is HubSpot.
Right.
Whereas like for us,
well, our master turns into Carbon, because once they're a paying client, they're in Carbon, and that's where the source of truth is.
Got it. For the details of those clients. So it's about figuring out where is, like, the worst thing you can do is try to have duplicate data, like have duplicate data that has to be managed, because then neither of them are right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's going to be important as we set the foundation of these integrations. And it's easy for us, at least for me, to talk about how we do that in our firm, but it's going to be the same song and dance with a client too, and helping them keep their data organized, because then you have a lot of overlap, and you could have, especially with us, our tax software, UltraTax, doesn't really communicate well with anything else, because Thomson Reuters tries to do everything themselves. And because we don't use their CRM or their practice management, the data it's not really kept up with. So we have to have processes for any time something changes. We need to know to go into UltraTax to change an address there and also change it somewhere else, and then just know where that's connected, so it's all getting updated. Because otherwise you run into the situation where a few months down the road, you do a POA and you get the wrong information on there. It's all kind of crazy stuff. You try to contact the client, you got different phone numbers everywhere. So
right, having different conflicting information, I think, is worse than having no information.
Oh yes, oof, tell me about that. So let's do we have anything else?
There's a question.
Yeah.
Rich has a question about using HubDoc as an integration. So HubDoc comes as a free, you get a free subscription for any of your business edition plans in Xero. So we use a lot for document exchange, and it's good for pushing backup documentation down into bank transactions.
Well, so that's a good example. So I may have said HubDoc by accident. We use HubSpot for the CRM, but HubDoc was purchased by Xero. Still sort of a separate company, but that's an example of consolidation, where this was a good product. It had a lot of value props that were helpful to be bundled into Xero. So eventually, I think with a seamless integration, it's a document management. There's a lot that it can do and probably will do within Xero as they continue to integrate it internally. So that's where Xero kind of absorbed one of those bubbles around it. And I think that's, as we get into types of integrations, let's kind of talk about that.
Yep. So types of integrations, and I put sort of, because these are not all integrations, but they do go back to like how we're moving data either automatically or semi-automatically from between software packages. So tell us about types of integrations.
Yeah. So native integrations are going to be directly between two platforms. And I think that's sort of where we're talking about the APIs, where, you may not have a lot of ability to customize this. It's just going to be, and sometimes they could be great. We were warning about the poor integrations, but sometimes A native integration, you plug and play and it works great. So it's always good to have like a test playground of some of this data, or just to see how it works in, in the wild. Your native integrations tend to be more universal and basic, and it's not going to be very tuned into this is how we do things, or so. And I think that in most cases we try to use the native integration first because it requires the least amount of effort on our end. Custom built integrations, that's different. That's where you're going to have somebody that's basically dictating what data is going to be moving and how it's going to be moving between systems. And that does require somebody that's, basically looking at that on a full time, and the more custom it is, the harder it's going to be to keep updated as products update on both sides. So one product changes something, it's going to change that integration, and another product changes something right after, and then it's going to change that integration too. So, just keeping up with that. We've got third-party tools like Zapier. I'm sure Zapier or Zapier. I call it Zapier, and I'm pretty sure that's what it's called because it's Zaps. There's Power Automate. There's apps that will connect, that will act as the bridge. So these are more or less bridge apps that are creating these. So a lot of the integrations I was talking about earlier that we use internally, we're using Zapier to keep them connected, because Zapier is sort of like the duct tape, is what I say, between systems. It works great. Usually doesn't get disconnected, but then if something does change, you got to go in and fix the zap and not have to fix it on both sides of the both products. And that's the third party tool. And we tend to prefer those right now until we start seeing some more consolidation and we start seeing better native integrations. We usually go straight to the Zapier. And Zapier's a wealth of different apps that it works with. That's usually the industry standard when we're talking about third party tools.
I have been saying this for a couple of years. I think Zapier might be the most important software an accountant can go out and learn how to use.
Yeah. Because that's your foundation of understanding of what this stuff is. And I think, once you start learning that, then all of this other stuff will kind of fall into place and kind of fits together. And you start understanding what that means when it's like the data moving from systems and all of that. RPAs, that's not really an integration. That's more of just automating the routine process that you do. And the more exposure you get to RPAs, the more it just seems like it's like a, it's almost like a actual ghost kind of just doing things on the screen. That's what I've seen. It's we saw some examples of this recently during Accounting Salon, and I'm looking at it and I used the example of Zapier is more like paint by numbers, and RPAs is painting on a blank canvas. So you could do anything with RPAs as long as it could be done on the computer, but it's ultra specific and fine. Like it's going to take a lot of time to get that stuff right to work again and again repeatedly. So,
well, when you were talking a minute ago about UltraTax and how it's a struggle because UltraTax is desktop software, so it doesn't have APIs, you can't make calls to it. I was thinking, I wonder if there's an application for RPA, because RPA doesn't seek out data like a native integration API calls. It's seeking out a piece of data, something that is called first name or something that is called invoice balance or whatever. RPA doesn't do that. RPA is, the way I understand it, basically like mouse movements and clicks and typing and grabbing
colors
things that are on
shapes.
A screen. Yeah, it's stuff that's on a screen. So it's not the data, it's almost the image. And so to me, that's a real strong indication that there's an application there for desktop software. So like if you could teach Power Automate, I think was probably like the standard for RPA. If you could teach Power Automate to log into UltraTax, open up a client, grab, an address, turn that into text, go into HubSpot, and update it. Like maybe that becomes almost like the Zapier of desktop.
That's the bridge.
Software. Yeah.
RPA is the bridge between desktop and cloud. I like that. It's more like the toddler that you're teaching how to do things, since it's looking at the colors and the shapes and all that. So then you got manual data imports and exports, which honestly, we still do a lot of that too, because some of these integrations aren't the greatest. And, and sometimes keeping things simple, if it's not going to take you a whole ton of time to do, we've just opted to do that. And we're rethinking all of that in every case, but in some cases, it's just as well to just manually run an export into a CSV, pull that data right into Xero. So it's, again, it takes a little bit of time on each one. So it's just identifying what are the big time sucks? What are the big time savers that you can do? And I think always, so let's just keep going.
We used to have a e-commerce client. We don't really do those anymore. And like, this is like years ago, before A2X was a real big player in the e-commerce market, where we had a client. Well, this actually leads really well into this slide, which is like,
we have horror stories. Yeah.
Integration horror stories. We had this client who, I think they got Lightspeed or something. It was something that says they integrate with Xero. And the horror story was that the integration would basically create an invoice for every single transaction and try to push that through Xero. And so we ended up, first of all, disconnecting it because it was a bad word show. And then we would just export the data, consolidate into daily summaries or monthly summaries or whatever. So my integration horror story is pushing over invoices, single invoices for each sales transaction into the general ledger.
Yeah. And we've needed to create an integration. I don't know. It's sometimes it's a mess. So just be careful. Like it's just, sometimes we basically have had to close down Xero accounts and create new ones just because we've created such a mess by messing with an integration. So just understanding that. So let's kind of fast forward a little bit and how to learn more about integrations. Amanda, where do you learn about integrations?
Well, the first thing is if I hear of a software that I might want to adopt, or my client hears of a software that they might want to adopt, I look to see if there's like a partner channel, accountant's channel, because that's going to generally be the best source for like the details of an integration versus just marketing and the sales team. So a lot of times the people that are running, and we have a lot of friends that have done this now who have practices and then kind of on the side are working with apps in their accountant's channel. Those folks a lot of times have lived it, and so they know what they're doing. So that's where I'd go. Also peers, like some communities that are out there. Tax Twitter is a great one. If you are on Twitter, those are some really smart folks who are willing to help a lot of times with opinions on this kind of stuff. Other communities, try it out too. Like Xero has a demo company that you can plug integrations into. So either using that, which is pre-populated with some data, or starting a trial and trying out like an integration before you connect it to your live account is a good idea. One recommendation is to make sure that as you are figuring this out, you document it all the way. Because you might think it makes sense now, and then you go back 6 months later and you're like, where's the button for this thing? So
let's get some practical how-tos, because that's where we're going to start with. Another poll.
We have another poll.
Yeah. So
Where do you
here
guys
we go. Where do you go for your peer support and communities?
I guess I should have mentioned accounting conferences too, right? Like, although accounting, I know you just got back from Accounting Web, and it seems like that was a pretty good place to get some.
That was great.
A lot of great speakers there.
A lot of great speakers, a lot of great people there in attendance, and a lot of great, even vendors. There's a vendor hall, and just, there was just a lot of open space to talk about things, and didn't feel rushed. Everybody was there. It was great. So it was, it's whenever you have that time to talk with people that are like you, that are in your world, it just opens it up. You don't even know what kind of conversations are going to come up, but they're all integrated. They're all connected, and we all kind of, like I said, my whole world started with Xero. Like ground zero to me was how I learned. That was my community almost. I was on the Xero advisory board. So that was how I met a lot of my peers.
Same here. Okay.
So practically speaking, so let's talk about, I don't know if we're going into this one yet, but when we talk about practically, how does all this stuff work? Start with the end in mind. What data do you want to move? Foundationally, what is it that you're trying to accomplish, and where do you need things to go? So looking at those maps and mapping things out, understanding, narrowing it down to, two or three products that you're going to look at, because you don't want to always go with the first thing. That's like anything in life. You don't want to go with the first thing that you see, the shiny new object. And what problem are you solving, right? So let's go into the different types that we've highlighted. And, we don't have any practical like how-tos, but we can talk on our experience on different ones that we've, that are out there, right? So everybody, if you're doing any kind of payroll, or if your clients are, you've probably witnessed or seen what these integrations look like, and they're all slightly different. You would think that they'd be all the same, but they're not. ADP does things one way, Gusto does things another way, and we use both at our firm. We even have some clients that are probably still on paychecks. I'm not a big fan of how that works, but I don't even know how that works. But like with ADP, for example, I mean, both the integrations are pretty good, but ADP creates journal entries and Gusto creates transactions. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit further about that, but there's a difference there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you prefer? So integrations with, the data can come in a bunch of different ways. For payroll, it's coming in as a bill versus a journal entry. What do you like better?
What do I like better? Honestly, I think they're both all right. Like at first, the Gusto was a little bit more limiting and controlling because it created an invoice, and then it was harder for us to manipulate things. But at the end of the day, if you have it set up right, it's just going to take some time because, it's just a little quirky in the beginning. But once you get it set up right, it works pretty universally. I mean, both of them work. It was just, especially early days, they didn't always work. And we had to do certain things manually too. We had clearing accounts and everything else just to get it all to kind of fit. So it took us a little duct tape on the side too, to get everything filtered right and work.
But conceptually, like, do you have a preference? Because I have a kind of strong preference. I don't like when apps make journal entries maybe this is like old school accountant mindset. I don't like apps making journal entries. I much prefer for an app to post an invoice or set of invoices or a bill, because I just know where it is. I don't have to go digging in journal entries. To me, journal entries should be, for the most part, exceptions, closing kind of things. So I happen to prefer bills.
Gene says journal entries are limiting, so I think he agrees with you there. And Penny, our friend Penny, says that so just having both is a good option too. I mean, there is no right or wrong way on this. It does need to work. You do need to get that right, but it should be saving you time, because otherwise you're stuck manually entering that data. Because how it hits the bank is ADP will hit three big transactions and that's it. You have a lump of taxes, and gosh, I don't know if you've seen clients try to do this themselves, but they'll just take everything and throw it into tax, or then they'll take the rest of it, throw it into pay. And there's a lot to be done with the payroll entries, and it could go in a lot of different directions. So that's
raise
one of
your
the
hand
most
if you've ever
important
had
ones.
to undo your client's coding with an integration.
Yeah,
all the time. I'd say, like, if we get a new file, like a new client that comes into us with Xero and Gusto, 40% of the time we have to go back and undo the way they've coded.
They have a 40% payroll tax expense because all the withholdings is going into employee tax expense.
Right. And then there's all these unpaid bills. So what are some other integrations that we looked at? Accounts payables one.
Yeah. So payables, there's a lot of ways to automate this, and there's a lot of different options there. But when you said that the payroll thing, it just kind of made me think of all the times I've seen even receivables, if somebody's doing invoices and then it pulls in and it doesn't match with any of the transactions. There's just a lot of time savings with integrations if it's set up right. So this is where the rubber meets the road in figuring out which is which, because all of these are different. Now, payable is a lot different than payroll itself because of the nature of the transactions and how all that works. So this is why it all segments out. And then, so we do go into sales a little bit, and sales is its own beast. I remember, just messing with, clients that had their income was overstated. It was double because they had info pulling in from the POS or CRM, and they'd have, income there was never reconciled. And then they have deposits coming into the bank, and then that's getting coded to revenue. And then on the tax return, their income was, 400,000, and they really made 200,000 for the year. It was like almost double. And so they paid double on the taxes. So it's really important to review this stuff and how other people have set it up too, when a client comes to you or how it's being done. And it's always good to review what these integrations do. It's good to set aside time to focus on different buckets of your firm and see what else you can integrate. And
I feel like sales is where you can get so granular in data. And that's where you have to step back and be like, okay, how much of this do I need in my general ledger? You know, like it's another integration horror story, not really integration horror story. This was a client using QBO on his own, and we were moving him over to Xero. It was a e-commerce. He had a general ledger line for every type of t-shirt they sold, which was like hundreds. So there was a general ledger line in sales, cost of goods sold, and inventory for every single one. So like clearly you don't need that level of granularity in your general ledger where you have every different style of t-shirt, but it has to be a deliberate decision how much of that lives in the sales app versus how much are we pushing through an integration into the general ledger.
Yeah.
I know we probably have some questions. Are you ready?
So James, I've been looking at, he was asking about apps for payables. I've been looking at, we've been working with Veeam. I think Veeam is pretty good with Xero. There's a bunch of others. There's Melio, there's Bill.com. There's a lot of Routable now. There's a lot of players out there. I think it's, try to pick one that you like. And I think they all, honestly have their own quirks and different things about them. But, eventually Xero might buy one of them too. So who knows?
That would be nice.
Yeah.
All together. All right, Gary, I think we have one more poll, right? One or two. And then if anybody's got questions, we're happy to answer in the couple of minutes we have left. I know there's probably somebody right behind us.
Rich mentioned inventory. So inventory for manufacturing. I don't know any off the top of my head, but I've heard Deer's pretty good, and Fishbowl. Both of those are pretty good.
And then I don't know what the capabilities are of Locate, which Xero just bought. And somebody did ask when that was going to be released.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know this, but I suspect that, they time a lot of big announcements with XeroCon. So hopefully by XeroCon, we'll hear something, a plan for that if it's not a full release.
Stay tuned on the main stage.
And come to XeroCon, y'all. Come to New Orleans and come see us.
We'll both be there. Yeah.
All three of us, I'll be there as well. And I have to say, out of all the shows I've ever been to, XeroCon, the two that I got to go to were fantastic.
Oh,
they
yeah.
really were.
Great culture. Great.
Two of the best shows.
People.
So,
well, thank you for having us, Gary.
Thanks for being here.
We do have a slide if anybody wants to get a hold of Scott or I. This is how you can find us on all the socials.
Yeah, we have unique names, so probably wouldn't be too hard to find us on any of them.
And then before we wrap it up, what is CISO, Amanda? What is that?
It's CISD. It's Certified Instructional Systems Designer. So I have a certificate in writing and training, basically training folks. Yeah. So
the elephants in the room. Right?
There we go. All right. Well, thank you both for sharing your knowledge. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for attending and participating. We do have one more session today, and it's on the counterpart there on QBO. So we, again, thank you all for being here, and we hope we'll see you two very soon. We'll certainly see you in New Orleans, if not before then. Otherwise, hopefully we'll see everybody else on the session very soon. Thanks
For having us, Gary.
Take care.
Appreciate it.